Alright, today we're back on the topic of monetization, this time focusing on Take-Two Interactive and their NBA 2K series. I know a lot of people may be sick of this topic. The evolution of microtransactions and further monetization within games is a subject that has been hashed and rehashed time and time again, but it would not warrant further criticism if the goalpost was not constantly being shifted. The most recent event involves NBA 2K19, and before we go any further, I want to acknowledge that there will not be background footage of 2K in the video, because I do not in fact play the game. I am not an authority on sports games, far from it, and because of that, this has nothing to do with the quality of gameplay within the title. I could not speak to that effect even if I tried. This video entirely pertains to the monetization practices of the franchise. Strauss Zelnick, CEO of Take-Two Interactive, has notably expressed that he believes GTA 5 Online is under-monetizing on a per-user basis. Now, GTA is of course a different franchise than 2K, but I find it hard to believe this mindset does not envelop a larger swath of Take-Two's properties well and truly beyond just Grand Theft Auto. The problem is, monetizing users has come under fire lately and is increasingly difficult to pull off without spiking user animosity. Well, it appears that NBA 2K19 has found a relatively new format to try out. First, we need to establish a historical and forward-looking timeline. NBA 2K is an annualized franchise, and among the roster of annualized games, it is right next to FIFA as a series that makes only slight variations and launches year after year like clockwork. The largest change is roster additions and switches. Since the game revolves around a real-world emulation of the NBA League itself, a lot of the game's framework is pre-established. There are, of course, gameplay additions over time, but the bread and butter of the series, from my understanding that is, new year, new league, new roster composition, new game. That's effectively what's going on. Now, unlike many other annualized titles, such as Call of Duty for instance, NBA 2K servers are actually taken offline a couple of years after release. To this very day, I know a decent number of gamers that will spin up Call of Duty Black Ops or Black Ops 2 on occasion, which are many years old now, but that is not possible with the 2K series. As of now, 2K18 and 2K19 are the only entries that are active and allow for player versus player online gameplay. This is done as an effort to force the player base into their new titles, which means in order to continue to play even just 3 or so years after the point where you entered the series, you will be compelled to purchase a new $60 version. But that's not all. On top of this rotation wherein the servers shut down to cluster the entire player base into the latest 2 releases, the game contains nearly every single predatory monetization tactic that has come under fire in recent years. When the word loot boxes is mentioned, most people think of EA, and while they were responsible for the Star Wars Battlefront 2 fiasco, of course, that is true, they were not the only guilty party on the playground. NBA 2K, under Take-Two Interactive, contains packs just like EA's FIFA franchise. Packs are a randomized selection of cards that are not just aesthetic or cosmetic, but also have direct ties to gameplay performance. The 2K franchise contains both loot boxes and pay-to-win systems, but on top of that, factoring in the forced migration to newer titles, it deliberately seeks to force users to participate in their pay-to-win loot box economy multiple times over during the span of a few years. As the older versions of 2K go offline, your team progress goes offline with it, and in the new version, you will need to earn or buy packs all over again to build up your team. But here's the issue. Despite being emblematic of almost every single predatory trend in modern gaming, NBA 2K has taken a further step. I'm a bit unclear as to when exactly the system came online, but very recently a program spun up which plays what appear to be unskippable 30-second advertisements before the start of individual games. Now, this isn't the first time that 2K has used advertising within the game itself. In the past, partnered brands included Converse and various other products and were displayed in-game, but this is a much more aggressive approach to advertising than what was utilized in the past, and also comes at a very suspect time. NBA 2K19 recently went on sale, but not just any sale, a massive sale that discounted the game by about 95% down to a total of $3. With a sale this large, it's pretty obvious that a huge influx of players would have and did occur, so the immediate addition of longer, forced advertisements at the start of games begins to make a lot more sense. Rope in a new group of users who will then be subjected to the pay-to-win loot box economy, monetize them through advertising, and then soon after, relatively speaking, force them to upgrade to a new version of the game for a much larger price tag, or they can no longer play because the servers get taken offline. Now, it's worth noting that if players disable the 2K TV option in their settings menu, it will remove the unskippable ads from the pre-game screen, but a lot of players are unaware of this, and even if there is currently an option to remove these advertisements, having to disable a component of the game that may be desirable to certain players at certain points just to avoid invasive advertising is not an acceptable system. Consider this. NBA 2K entries are $60 games at launch. They are annualized to launch every calendar year. They contain loot boxes, they have pay-to-win systems in place, they disable past servers about 2 years after release to force the player base to pay again and re-enter their economy with a clean slate, having lost everything they invested in the past title, and they also contain invasive advertising that appeared directly after a player base influx that resulted from a large discount. NBA 2K is a perfect example of the blurred line between mobile game methodology and AAA full-price titles. In a free-to-play mobile game, it is exceedingly common to see advertising such as this. You can pay to skip the ads and get rewards faster, or sink in the time to watch whatever crappy product is shown and take that trade-off. But seeing that practice on top of everything else is a new bar for a $60 game. Now, though, we have to discuss ESRB ratings. NBA 2K is a game that is rated E for everyone, meaning that there is no age restriction on the purchase of this game. Now, to be fair, age restrictions on video games are often a joke anyways. I myself circumvented restrictions placed on M-rated games long before I was even in my mid-teens, playing on a friend's console, or maybe they just didn't even check an ID at GameStop. It happens constantly. But this is a little bit different. In NBA 2K19, an E-rated game, they are showing advertisements for M-rated shows on FX. Now, I won't go so far as to say that the commercials themselves are all that graphic or shocking, but there is a definite conflict between selling an E-rated game and then playing advertisements with more graphic visual material than the game itself ever contains in that E-rated game. And the advertisements are not the result of a third party, they are piped right into the game's framework by the parent company themselves. Here is where I have to get a little bit more conspiratorial though, even though personally I view it as an obvious phenomenon, not a conspiracy. These are all deliberate tactics. The directive that 2K is functioning under is some variation on the principle of monetize harder on a per-user basis. That's exactly what Strauss-Zelnick said. In order to do that, they need to find new methods to extract the money. And in the face of their game already having extraction methods up the ass for user funds, now they need to monetize without leveraging additional expenses to their users, which comes in the form of advertising. On a very basic level, advertising as a method of funding game development isn't intrinsically wrong. A free-to-play game that serves advertisements so as to exchange user time for working capital should not necessarily be condemned, but all factors combined, that's not what NBA 2K is. To be clear, I am not in opposition of game monetization as a general concept. To make a game and continue to support it, money is required. I get that. I myself have spent a far larger than necessary sum on Path of Exile, a free-to-play game that sells cosmetic microtransactions. And though I disagree with how high some of those prices are, screw it. They do great work. The game is only ever growing and increasing in value, so I gave them money and I was happy to do so. 2K players and fans are not really in the same situation. At every corner, they are monetized even against their will. It's a system of pay us or suffer, instead of an incentive program wherein the fans are appreciative and enthusiastic about that same support. An added factor to consider is the now growing skepticism of dynamic difficulty adjustment. The best example I can reference is the patent from EA, which holds numerous ties to user in-game spending and proposes the augmentation of difficulty and character performance based on the amount of money spent, the likelihood that the user will leave, or a multitude of other signals that the document entails. EA has, of course, adamantly maintained that they hold this patent for no reason, and the system is not used in any of their games. I was not able to find specific indications or evidence of a similar patent held by Take-Two, with their own variation or adaptation on the system, but dynamic difficulty adjustment as a function of user spending is a concept that exists in the industry, and the bell cannot be unrung. In PostScript research, I did run into the patent that Take-Two has held since 2005, which pertains to a system very similar to dynamic difficulty adjustment, but unlike the EA patent, this makes pointed mention of usage when a player lacks a human opponent, which is a very important distinction. I also did not see meaningful ties to in-game spending, monetization, or microtransactions, so I did want to acknowledge that they hold a really wordy patent that pertains to difficulty, but it's not really on the same level, and it's not something I view to be all that significant for the current subject. With all of these factors considered, and 2K20 right around the corner, the community is rightfully skeptical of what tactics Take-Two Interactive will employ to advance their prerogative of enhanced per-user monetization. As the concept of monetization becomes increasingly incendiary over time, I predict that a great many more publishers and franchises will pivot to advertising-based solutions in which users are served ads or branded products in-game. As a general concept, this does have potential, but it does not have potential if it is simply layered on top of all existing and overly aggressive methods that many games already employ. A regression on existing monetization, such as the removal of microtransactions, loot boxes, and a reduction in the initial price tag, or outright elimination of an upfront cost entirely, may be a positive step. But as we all know nowadays, these companies operate on a scale of progressive increases or cataclysmic failure. So the hope that advertising may replace the more predatory methods is slim at best. As the backlash mounts, I would not be surprised if they remove the advertisements entirely and claim that in some capacity the fact that they could not be skipped was a bug or something similar. That's a pretty classic deflection there. But it's incredibly hard to believe, at least for me, that this system is anything other than a perfectly planned tactic to spike revenue from 2K19 directly before the release of 2K20 while maximizing the potential audience to whom the 2K20 monetization will be served. But that's it. In reality, the vast majority of these sports franchises are square in the headlights of the loot box and pay-to-win microtransaction ban bill that is persisting within the United States government. So this could even be an exploratory test to determine ways forward should it pass. But that is honestly pure speculation. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have various different memberships, merch, etc. Same as always, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.